Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei and I'm so excited to paint with you today. Today we're going to be doing another page in our everyday watercolor journey, and we are going to be doing a mountain landscape, simple mountain landscape, where we're going to be working on our gradient washes and also our patience, okay? Because we're going to have to let lots of layers dry between different sections of this painting. Patience is a huge skill that you have to practice in watercolor. You have to let things dry. So we're gonna get started. We're gonna do our sky, our mountains, our trees, but we're gonna have to let things dry in between. So make sure to have something to distract you this morning, or also to have a handy dandy drying tool. This is a heat gun. So this has low velocity, so the air that comes out of it isn't very powerful, but it's very hot or warm air, so it still dries things quickly. Or a hair dryer if you have one, and you don't have a heat gun. All right, I'm just using a size 10 Velvet Touch brush. I am going to be using my core paints and my sketchbook here, which we have 2 more pages after today, so 2 more days after this until we start a new sketchbook. All right, so I'm going to start with some ultramarine. This is a very warm blue. If you watch the color mixing video, we talked about warm versus cool colors. So this is a very warm blue, meaning it has red undertones to it. And I know you might not be able to see that right away, but you'll see when you put it next to the cool blue. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a sky. All right, I'm putting in, you see how I'm leaving lots of bits of white space. And I'm going to drop in more color, and I'm being very streaky, but I want this wash, it doesn't have to be a perfect gradient. I want there to be kind of streaks in it and white spots. And I'm going to kind of go all the way, or at least halfway down. My mountains are going to cover up most of this. But you see how it gets lighter and lighter as we go down. I'm going to add some more color up here, a little bit in here. But leaving some gaps. You can pull out color. And then what are we gonna do next? We're gonna let it dry. So I'm gonna pause the video and then go get myself a delicious cup of coffee, and then we will come back after it's all dry and continue on with our next layer. Our next layer, we're going to be using phthalo blue, which is a cool blue color, and you will be able to see when we put them up against each other how different they really are and why one is warm and one is cool. All right, go put on your patience pants and wait for this to dry. Okay, my friends, we're back and we are completely dry. It has to be completely dry for this next step. Okay, so now we're going to get into our phthalo blue, which is a cool blue color. And we're going to make lots of this color in our palette. So I'm pulling out lots and lots of pigment, and I'm going to add a bunch of water to make a nice big puddle. And sometimes folks get, with this stage, when you need to make a lot of paint, they definitely fall short and they don't make enough, or they don't pull out enough pigment to make it as dark as they need it to start with. And then they end up with a very, very light wash because they've made a lot by adding a lot of water, but not adding quite enough paint. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so I think I have enough paint for this. So I'm going to start with a mountain. I'm going to get lots of paint. I'm going to soak it all up in my brush, and I'm just going to paint in a mountain red, and it's going to look super like stark as I go along. And I want it to remain nice and juicy and wet while it's on there waiting for me to kind of get to it. So you want to make sure you're not putting on a dry line of paint that doesn't have much water in it or much pigment. And then I'm going to start to rinse my brush off and pull that paint down the page, getting lighter and lighter as we go. And I'll even go back up to the top just to make sure. I want to make sure things stay evenly damp as I'm painting this. So now I might need to pull some of this off, but I want an even kind of dampness from top to bottom so it all dries at the same time. And then I could even go back in, drop in a few bits. And I know this looks super dark and dramatic. It's going to dry lighter. And this white area down towards the bottom is going to be nice and light. So you can pull a little bit of color out. All right, time to let it all dry again. And I know this is the hardest part, but it's so, so important. So go ahead and find something else for you to do. When you're doing something like this and you really have to let it dry and you have a lot of creative energy, I would recommend either having a sketchbook next to you that you can doodle in while this is drying if you don't have a heat tool, or have another painting going, either the opposite side of your sketchbook or just a scrap piece of paper that you can play on and do some other experiments on while this is drying. Otherwise, you are going to get very impatient and want to meddle with it before it's time. So I would also recommend letting it dry for at least 2 to 3 minutes before you use your heat gun, because especially if you're doing any wet on wet and you dropped in extra color, you want to make sure that paint has an opportunity to kind of move organically and do what it was going to do before you get in there with the heat gun and set it and dry it kind of where it is. So I'm going to let this dry for about a minute or two, and then I'm going to come in with my heat tool and dry it the rest of the way. Okay, see you back here in just a moment. Okay, round 2 is done, and now we're on to round 3, which is going to be very similar to round 2, in that we're going to put another ridge along this mountain, or another mountain ridge along this line. We're going to do it on this side, and we're going to come down. We want it to be kind of lower, and we want it to be juxtaposed to this lighter area. We want to make sure it's not like butting right up against the same color at the top. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to rinse off my brush, and I'm going to blend this down. I just don't have very far to go, so that's even better. Pull in some more color, a few spots. And my next step, I'm actually going to try to put in an opposing mountain up this way that is closer to us, that is green and a little misty. And if I could do this over again, I would have kind of stopped right here or faded this out on this side, because I think this is going to be very difficult to cover up, because once again, our watercolors are transparent. So whatever's on the layer before, so that's why I'm just pulling out some of this color here. I'm lightening this up because I'm going to put a green layer kind of over top of this. There we go. I don't have a very clean paper towel, but I'll do my best with it. Okay, so again, we're going to let this dry. Doesn't this look beautiful? Can you see how this blue is so much different than this blue? How this one could be considered a warmer blue and this is a cooler blue. This looks like ice, polar ice caps, that kind of thing. And this just has a warmer tone to it, like a bright blue sunny sky. All right, so we are going to let it dry again and do another layer on this side. And then we're going to get to trees. Yay! All right, so for the other side, I want to do kind of a greenish blue color, a a little bit misty, which is going to be hard because I have this hard line here, but I do want to bring it up, kind of up here. So I'm just going to start with, I got some sap green here and some phthalo blue. And I'm going to come down this way across the front here. Whoop. I'm going to kind of do the same thing where I'm going to, and I made it super dark at the top because I did want to cover up that line there, but I'm going to let it come down here and have that kind of ethereal, misty quality. It's like a mountainside. You know, I'm going to drop in, I have some burnt umber here. This part way at the top, like balancing this with trying to cover this up, but having some other qualities in there of airiness and mistiness is hard. It's like I have to be strategic. Maybe when I put, I'll put a tree kind of over that line. So I'm pulling out some color in a few spots. And then leaving some in some other spots. And then as I go up here, I'm kind of getting lighter as I get up into the sky. You can just play with that, dropping in color in different spots. There's no like right way to do this. But that warm green juxtaposed to this cool icy blue, I think is a really cool feel. And we're going to put in some pine trees on this warm area that's kind of closer to us, and that helps that kind of recede into the distance. Okay, let it, say it with me, let it dry. Okay, let's let it dry again. Okay, we're back for our last and final element to this piece, which is going to be our pine trees. And I'm going to do these, I could definitely do another layer on here, but I'm just going to cover it up with pine trees. There's a little bit showing through. For my pine trees, I'm going to use, what am I using? I'm using ultramarine and sap green to get this beautiful dark green color. And everything is dry. We're going to double check. And then I'm going to have, let's see, I'm going to have a pine go kind of right to here where it gets a little lighter. I'm using my, you could definitely use a smaller brush. This one is going to hold lots and lots of paint in it. It has a nice fine tip. But this is a long round brush, so it's got really long bristles that come to a very fine point at the top. And I'm having my pines kind of angle upward. Everybody paints pine trees differently. There's all kinds of different techniques. Some folks who really struggle can get great results with a square brush too. I just rinsed off my brush to get lighter, to kind of get, as we come down in here, it's more of this misty feel. And I'm just going to kind of end right there. I'm going to put another one right here. I almost want these to feel like they are disappearing into the fog of whatever is going on below. These are just the very tops of some really tall trees sticking out. There. I'm going to do another one right here that's going to go all the way down into the bottom. Painting trees can definitely be very therapeutic or meditative. Do another one like right here. You make them as full or as sparse as you want. Sometimes you go back and you do a couple extra layers. And these ones on the bottom here, I'm actually going to take my brush and kind of mess up the bottom a little bit. So it looks like they're disappearing for both of these. Looks like they're disappearing kind of into the tree line down here. Take a little ultramarine and throw it in there. There we go. And you can keep going and adding. You can take these same ideas and change up your whole landscape, keeping these colors, but changing where your mountain ranges are, how many of them you have. That is up to you, how many trees you add. If you want to add a little building or something, a cabin, different types of trees. So this is me just kind of scrubbing along the page, pulling out some color. Again, giving it that misty, things kind of just disappear into the fog. All right, we're gonna let that dry and we're gonna take off our tape and see how we feel. All right, everything is nice and dry. I'm gonna peel off my tape. And if the only thing you learned from today's journal exercise was patience, then you have learned so much, my friends. It is one of the hardest things to do for many, 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 many painters, watercolor painters in particular. All right, there we are. Oh, I love it with the tape off, of course. Look at that beautiful border that we have. So gradient washes, letting each layer dry before the next one goes on. Scrubbing in the bottoms of our trees and pulling out some color to help create that misty effect. Learned a little bit about our cool and warm colors. These are both blue, but they look very, very different. A warm blue and a cool blue. So thank you so much for joining me once again on this everyday watercolor journal idea journey. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with a friend. Thank you so much. Oh, I have to say thank you to my Super Thanks contributors. So if you want to know more about Super Thanks, you can scroll down around the bottom of this video and there's a Super Thanks button. But for those of you who have been sending me Super Thanks, my goodness, thank you so, so much. I so appreciate it. It's absolutely fantastic. It keeps me going every day and wanting to paint more and more in my journal every day. All right, so thanks everybody. Take care. Don't forget to check out the description and happy painting, y'all.